Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today, we're doing like a quarterly wrap-up of my reading year so far. I'm going to talk about my favorite books that I've read so far this year. So all of my 5 stars and a lot of like my strong 4 stars that I've been giving out. I don't know, I just thought it would be fun to like go through the stats because 2022 is being my best reading year so far in terms of quantity wise. And so I wanted to talk about the books that I've been reading because I only did a mid-month wrap-up for January and I did a February wrap-up that I will link below, but I'm not going to do a March wrap-up because March was a very, very bad reading month for me. I didn't like most of the books that I read, and I didn't want my March wrap-up to be just me like shit-talking a bunch of books that I didn't enjoy. And so because I'm not doing a March wrap-up, and because you might not have seen my latest wrap-ups, I thought that I would do just like an overall video about my reading year so far, what I've been enjoying, and probably give you some recommendations if you would like to know my favorites so far this year. Like most people, I've actually switched from Goodreads to Storygraph. I'm still on Goodreads because I still have seen what other people have been updating about their ratings and all that, but I've mainly switched to Storygraph to record my reading, my ratings, my reviews. Storygraph offers a lot of options for stats, and I am going to be going through some of my stats from this year, the ones that I find the most interesting. So without further ado, let's just get into it. In 2022, so far this year, I have read 33 books. I am also using my reading journal to count the books that I've been reading. And here on Storygraph, it only says 32. So I think one of them is missing, but I think one of my DNFs is missing from there. But I have read 33 books so far this year. As you can see, I put my reading goal as 50 books because 50 books has been my reading goal for like the past 3 years and I've never hit it. And so I just wanted to be consistent with that number so that I can finally hit it, hopefully. And here it says that I'm 64% ahead, like I am ahead by 19 books. And in terms of page count, I have read 10,482 pages so far this year. In terms of genre, what I have here is they have a lot of different genres, and my top 2 genres for this year are actually LGBTQIA+ and contemporary, which I didn't really realize. I think that because LGBTQIA+ is not a genre in itself, anytime a book that I read has good representation of that, they just put it in that category. And so I didn't actually realize that I had read that many. And contemporary to me is very weird because I've always been someone that didn't, for example, like YA contemporaries. So the fact that I've been reading so much adult contemporary is kind of jarring to me because I didn't realize that I was really doing that. The third one that we have is historical. We also have a bunch of young adult, thriller, literary, fantasy, mystery. And in my least read, I have sociology. What the hell is that? What book did I read that was sociology? Oh, cultish. Okay. As you can see, they're very open with their categories, I think. So that's why I have a bunch of them on here. Now to talk about my average rating this year, it has been 3.61. A lot of the books that I've read, I've given 3 stars or lower, but honestly, that's okay by me because I'm getting like closer to nailing what my actual reading taste is. And so I don't see these as failures, honestly. But yeah, I have a lot of 3 stars. I have a lot of 3.25, 3.5, 2.5 that I sometimes on Goodreads round up to a 3. But I've also given a lot of 5 stars and 4.5s, and I am going to talk about all my favorites so far this year. And there are some books that I want to talk about. So I have been giving a lot of 4 stars and 5 stars, and that's what matters the most to me, honestly, that I enjoy what I'm reading. And like I said, anytime that I don't enjoy a book, I think that's fine. Like it just gets me closer to figuring out my reading taste, and so that's fine by me. Those are some of the stats that I wanted to go through. There are not a lot. And now we can actually get into the most exciting part of this video, which is talking about all of like my favorite books this year and all the books that I think that you should read. I think that we should start with all of my really strong 4-star reads because I wanted to leave my actual favorites till the end of the video. I'm going to talk about 5 books that I've given 4 stars to that I really, really enjoyed. They just weren't like all-time favorites, but I still think that you should read them. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. I read this book in early January and it was one of like my first like favorites of the year. And this book is about our matriarch of the family, that is Orquídea Divina, and there is a lot of magical realism tied into the story. And basically she's like this woman that has a lot of weird powers, kind of, and she's very mysterious, and all her family has kind of this weird traits, I would say. And basically she has lived in this house isolated her whole life with her family, but like isolated from everyone else. And when she is very, very old, she sends out a message to everyone in her family and she says, I'm kind of going to die, come collect your inheritance. And everyone's like, okay. And they go to this house, and instead of like dying like a normal person, Orquídea Divina is turning into a tree. And then you're just kind of figuring out what this inheritance is, what happened to Orquídea Divina, why is she turning into a tree, and you're just delving into this past of hers. This is the worst pitch I've ever done of a book, I think. The reason that this was 4 stars and not 5, first of all, the writing was very beautiful. The audiobook experience was incredible. I highly recommend the audiobook. But the reason that why this didn't reach 5 stars was that it dragged a bit towards the end. You're just like wanting to get answers, and there's just all these narrow routes, and it just got a little bit too convoluted. Like, I think that's really the word that I want to use. So that's why it wasn't like a perfect 5 stars, because I didn't feel like it was a neat start, middle, finish type of book. And I sometimes do enjoy those, especially when you're talking about someone's history or someone's family history. I do like more clean way to look at it. It involved way too many things that weren't explored properly, in my opinion. Is it still worth reading? Absolutely. I think it's an incredible book. I really want to read whatever else Zoraida Cordova has, because the writing was beautiful. It just wasn't quite 5 stars, but I still highly recommend it. Then the next book is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I've been meaning to read this book for a long time, and I will say that this is a very character focused. So if you don't enjoy that, if you like a book with a good ass plot and not very character driven, you will not enjoy this. And it's also one of those books where it's like really personal if you connect with the main character or not. I personally really did. I really loved our main character, which is why this book really worked for me, because I just cared so much about her, and I just felt all the emotions that were pouring out for her. You're just following this main character on this journey, kind of slice of life, this very personal journey. There's not a lot of action to it. And if you don't like that, and if you don't like her, you will not like this book. But as I said, I personally really, really liked Casey, and Casey is this struggling writer. She really wants to finish her novel that she's been writing for years. All of her friends are writers, and all of them kind of have given up on their dreams. And also she's like this struggling waitress in her late 20s. Her boyfriend just broke up with her. Her mom just died. So there's a lot going on at the beginning of the book. And you're just following along on this journey of her trying to finish her book, working her job, getting into relationships, getting her heart broken. And I don't know, the writing was just very, very beautiful to me. And there was just something about it. I don't know. I really connected with Casey. And anytime that she had a struggle, like I teared up. Anytime that she had a really great moment and something great happened to her, I also teared up. I don't know. It was very good. It was a very, very strong book. And if you're interested in it, and if you like this type of slice of life, personal, character-driven stories, then you might really, really enjoy this one. Next up, we have 2 of my most recent reads. The first one is Silence of Girls by Pat Barker. I read this book in March. I think it was the last book that I've read so far this year. And it was a library book. I no longer have it with me, but it was so incredible. I've been meaning to read this book for a long time, and this basically follows Briseida, that was the trophy wife of Achilles, not wife, but like the trophy when the Greeks took over Troy, and so she was taken as his kind of slave and was taken as his trophy. And so you see a lot of the dark side of Achilles and of the war. This is just a metaphor about what women go through in wars, and the rape, the fact that they were taken as slaves, the brutal violence against women. And so it was a very, very beautiful, hard to read book. The writing was incredible. Pat Barker is such a great writer, and I loved following like the dark side of Achilles, especially after reading a book like The Song of Achilles, where their story of him and Patroclus is so romanticized and it's so beautiful, and it's like Achilles is such a great man, and here you're like Achilles is a monster. All of them they're just monsters. I just love that aspect of it, right? But also Pat Barker got me feeling sorry for Achilles. If you know what happens, you know what happens. And she got me feeling sorry for Achilles and for Patroclus, right? And so I was just like, what do I feel? what do I feel here? Do I feel sorry for all these women? Yes. Do I also kind of feel sorry for Achilles? Yes. It was just very confusing, but I love the experience of reading this. She has another book out called The Women of Troy, and I can't wait to read that one. This was top tier. And then we have Stay With Me by Yobami Adebayo. This book was the most insane thing that I've read this year, and I do not say that lightly. This read as a mystery thriller because you just don't know where the story is going, and it's just such an insane ride. I can't even begin to explain it. This story is set in Nigeria, in Lagos, and it's about this couple that met when they were kind of young, and they got married, and they were so in love, and they've always agreed that polygamy is not for them. But she is really struggling to conceive her first child, which is something that's very, very important in a cultural aspect in Nigeria. And so her family and her boyfriend's family is like pressuring them to like have this kid, and you don't really know why they can't conceive. And what ends up happening is that after a few years, behind her back, her husband marries another woman to take as a second wife so she can conceive a child. And when I tell you that that is just the start of this insane ride, insane, it's crazy. And the characters are kind of really likable, and then you have all this sort of like betrayal and mourning and women's reproductive rights and like this all like shocking plot twist of family drama. And I read this in one sitting. I need to know what happened. It was an incredible story. Not 5 stars because there were some things that I didn't like where the story went. There were some moments where the characters were very, very insufferable. And so it just wasn't the perfect 5 stars, but it was one of the most insane things that I've read this year. And I highly recommend it if you love family drama, plot twists, and like it's just an insane ride that's also very beautiful. Now on to all of my 5 stars this year. Granted, this 5 stars, like this year, I'm just like, did I really, really enjoy a book? Then it's a 5 star. Like if it's just a fun ride, even if it's not a literary masterpiece, I will be giving it 5 stars because I'm just like, I don't care anymore. So please take that in mind when I'm talking about all these books, because some of them you might be like, what? But it's just my opinion. So let's get into it. The first one that I want to talk about is Hola, Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot and Other Stories by John Paul Brommer. This memoir, this collection of essays is so incredible. I had no idea who John Paul Brommer was, but he's a very, very talented, funny author. And it was just such a great reading experience. I listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend because it's narrated by John Paul Brommer. And so he puts a lot of himself and his emotions into this book. And it's just about him being a mixed Mexican-American living in Texas, I want to say, but I'm not sure. And it's just about his experiences coming out, finding his sexuality, discovering himself, struggling with his identity, not only sexually, like sexuality wise, but also race wise, and all of his struggles, all of his peaks, and the way that he built himself a career as a writer. It was funny, it was intense, it was sad at times, but he's just so funny in the way that he describes his experiences that you couldn't help but just love it. And you feel sad for him when he wants you to feel sad for him, but he can also make fun of himself and his experiences, which I think is so admirable of him. And yeah, I'm definitely a fan of him now. I loved this audiobook. It was a 5-star experience for me, and I really recommend this one if you like memoirs and collections of essays. Then we, of course, have Crying in hmart by Michelle Zauner. I don't think I've seen a single person not give this book 5 stars. It's just that incredible. It's a memoir about Michelle Zauner and the struggle that she faced when her mother got cancer. And you know that her mother has died at the beginning of the book. And it's just her experience grieving her mother and also grieving her Korean side, because she is Korean American on her mom's side. And so she is really struggling with her identity now that she has lost her mom. And it's about the cultural experiences, the harshness of sometimes living in an environment that doesn't want you to be there, about family struggles. She fought a lot with her mom, but she also really loved her mom. And it's just, the writing is so intense. I also listened to the audiobook. It's also narrated by the author, so I really recommend that way of listening to it and engaging with it. But it was just so sad, like the way it was written, and it was just a very memorable reading experience. Like I can still remember a lot of what happened and a lot of the ways that she described what was happening. And I think that's really valuable in a book. When a book is memorable, it means that it did its job right. And yeah, I love this book. It is very sad. It is highly triggering if you've ever dealt with family deaths, terminal illnesses. So be aware of that. But it was a very beautiful book that I don't think I'll ever forget. Next up, we also have my brand, and we have Butter Honey Pea Bread. Listen, I'm still going to mention this book. I reread it this year, so this is not a new 5-star, but this is one of my favorite books of all time. Like, this is one of the best books that I've ever read. So if you haven't read this yet, if I haven't shoved this down your throat enough, here you have it. Butter Honey Pea Bread follows the story of two twins. It's also set in Lagos, Nigeria, and it follows these two twins that they have been separated and they no longer have this close relationship, and you're trying to figure out what happened. There's a lot of mythology involved. There's a lot happening. You should also go see the triggers for this book, like the trigger warnings for this book, because it's not a book to take lightly. But the writing, one of the best things I've ever read. The descriptions of food, their relationship, the way it was written, everything about this book is a 5 stars. Like, there's nothing that I think is off in this book. This is a literary masterpiece that I was talking about. Like, this is a masterpiece. Francesca Chiuasi really did that, and she didn't have to, and she still did it. So, favorite book of the year, the century, you decide, go read it. Next up, we are going to enter the thriller mystery kind of genre. And the first one we're going to talk about is They Never Learned by Lean Fargo. Listen, this is one of those books that I was talking about. Like, is this a literary masterpiece? No. Is it kind of dumb sometimes? Yes. But it was a 5-star because I just had that much fun with it. We are following Scarlett, that is this professor at a university, and she is a serial killer. Basically, she kills all the bad men, so the men accused of rape, of assault, all of that, she just kills them dead. And I just loved following this perspective, okay? Like, it's so much fun. Scarlett is a very compelling character. She is very good at what she does, and she just makes you want to root for her. And I really admire that in a book, when you can make me root for the serial killer. It's also dual perspective. I also listen to the audiobook, which I think is a great way to read this one, because we have a dual perspective. So we have Scarlett, and then we have Carly. That is this freshman at that university, and she's kind of figuring herself out, figuring her sexuality, also figuring out her kind of dark side. And the audiobook has 2 different narrators for both of these parts, and I think that's incredible. Of course, that Scarlett's parts were more interesting because she's like an actual serial killer, but I will say that Carly's side was actually very interesting as well. Like, I was never bored listening to her POV, which I thought would happen, but overall, I just have so much fun with it. Towards the end, did it get kind of stupid? Yes. I don't care. It was a great reading experience. I had so much fun. It was very memorable, and so 5 stars. Then the next one that we have is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. Also kind of a thriller, and it's about our main character, Grace, and she is in prison writing a journal about all the people that she has killed. Basically, she has been in prison for a death that she says that she did not commit, and so she is writing this journal about all the actual people that she has murdered, whilst trying to get out of prison for this murder that she did not commit. Did that make sense? I'm not sure. Basically, all the deaths that she has committed, like all the murders that she has committed, is from her distant family, and it's the story of like personal vendetta. Like, she is murdering these people because they did her family wrong. It's a very, very silly book. I just thought it was so much fun. It's kind of like And Then There Were None, but from the serial killer's perspective. So you're like, each chapter, like, someone is killed, you're listening to the way that she like infiltrated their lives, the way that she has killed them, and it's always very different. Sometimes it's very, very stupid the way that she kills people, but again, I just thought it was fun. It was silly. I had a good time. 5 stars. And the last book that I want to talk about is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. I did not expect this book to be so good because there were a lot of mixed reviews when it first came out, but this is a thriller about our main character, Sydney, and she lives in the typical Brooklyn brownstone houses that were very typical of Black people to live in. So it's like this Black people community. And in recent times, Sydney has noticed that a lot of her neighbors have moved out, have kind of disappeared, and white families are moving in. And so at the beginning, she thinks it's just another case of gentrification, but the more that she looks into it, the more she realizes that maybe something more sinister is going on. Listen, this book was a 4.5. I'm still counting it because I really want everyone to read it because it was very interesting. But it's not a perfect 5 stars because we also have dual perspective, and the other guy, I think, is Fred, I don't remember. but he's like this white guy and he lives there and he's just trying to help Sydney. And I was like, I don't need your POV. I didn't love it. I really preferred Sydney's point of view and the way that she experienced things. So that's why it wasn't like a perfect 5 stars, because I didn't really enjoy one of the perspectives. But the story was, first of all, incredible. It was scary. It was, I won't say 100% realistic, because thrillers hardly ever are, but it was realistic to a certain point, which I appreciated. And when I tell that this was one of the most thrilling thrillers I've ever read. Like, I was listening to your book and I was like, oh my God, my heart was pumping and I was like, don't go in there. That kind of feeling that you have when you're watching like a horror movie and you're like, don't go in there, please. Like, something bad is going to happen to you if you enter that space. And so it was very thrilling. At the end, it just got batshit crazy. It just got completely insane. It just blew up in a way that I did not expect, but that I kind of loved. And so yeah, it was just like a 5-star rounded up, because it was fun, scary, thrilling, kind of realistic, and I just really enjoyed it. So why not give it a 5-star? Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this list of all of my favorite books so far this year. I had a lot of books to talk about, which means that my reading year is going very well. And I hope that you have taken some recommendations for yourself. Let me know if you have read any of these books so far. Did you enjoy them? Did you not? And what are some of your favorite reads from 2022? I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.